All right, everybody. Brad Hurst coming at you again today. Today is July 10th, 2020. It's about 5 p.m. where I'm at. It's very hot and humid here today, which is very unusual. But I wanted to take some time here to give an update on Comet C2020 F3 Neowise. I did a little presentation on this a couple days ago. And I went out and watched the comet myself, and there were some things that I actually saw that caught me by surprise. And so I went and did a little research and decided to do an update. I want to warn you that there's mic blast on this presentation. So when each slide comes in, my voice is quite a bit louder when it starts off, and so you might want to be prepared for that. I don't know how to control that. If there's some way to control that I'm not aware of, please you can let me know. If you like this video, please subscribe. And please share with other people as well. We're all learning this together. We're kind of all new at this, and this is something that I just wanted to contribute to the dialogue here. So please just sit back, listen to the whole thing, watch the whole thing, and if you like it, please share it with others and leave a comment. Anyway, so let's go on. Now, I got up pretty early in the morning. I got up about 3:30 to get myself together so I can go out and look at this comet. Got in the car about 4 a.m., drove a short distance to a place in town where I could actually look to the north and not have anything in front of me, and I could clearly see the comet. Now, this is not my picture. I'm not good at doing this. This is a picture that represents what it is that I actually saw. It looked very much like this, and so I put this up here. But it is not my picture, and it was there in stunning detail to see. And when you look at the constellations that it was in, it has some imagery in here that I think is pretty stunning. Here we are in the constellation that's known as Auriga. You can see I've put the comet in more of a detail. You can see right there in the head area. Now, it wasn't as bright as I'm putting it in here, but this is just the way that these are limits that I had with being able to put this together. But it's in the constellation of the chariot driver, the chariot king, who's got his lambs and his kids. And the imagery around this constellation, the stories around this constellation, is this is a chariot king who is looking towards heaven, preparing to take his lambs with him into heaven. We go to another depiction of the same constellation, but it's a Babylonian Persian depiction of it, and it shows us something a little bit different. Here we see the same constellation depicted in the Babylonian imagery artwork, and it was known as the Pleiades Watcher, the Watcher over the Pleiades, and he was known as the Reins Holder or the Pleiades Watcher. And you can see the comet is basically placed right over his whip as he's preparing to get his chariot going. And so this is the morning presentations of the comet, and from what I can tell from things that I've read, that there's going to be an evening presentation of this comet as well. When it comes around to that, we're going to look into that and see what's going on with that. In fact, let's look at this article here. This article tells us right here that Comet Neowise will come closest to the Earth on July 22nd through 23rd, and skywatchers across the Northern Hemisphere, including in India, will be able to see it with naked eyes or using binoculars after sunset. So we're looking at it now in the early morning, but this is going to become an evening presentation where we're going to be seeing it in the early evening. In the what would be referred to as the northwest instead of the northeast. The comet will start fading away starting August, as it will enter the other parts or the outer parts of the solar system. And in my previous video, I mentioned that the comet will essentially disappear in the constellation known to us as Comet Berenices, but what was known in the past was known as the Child, or some people even call it Bootes as well. But it was known as the Child, the desired of women, or the desire of nations, and it was an image of a woman holding a newly born child. And go back and look at the previous video that I did, and there's more information on that. And so I got the link for this. This is a science magazine that I look at every now and then, and It comes out of India, and it's quite an interesting magazine. But they have an article up on this comet. So let's go here. Now, as fascinating as the comet itself was, what I found to be more stunning was the vivid detail that I could actually see the Pleiades. To get the Pleiades up here, I could see the Pleiades very easily from where I was at. You've got Venus right here, and you've got the follower of the Pleiades in the constellation known to us as Taurus, and what was fascinating about this is to see how lined up they were. In fact, what's interesting is that as the comet, or not as a comet, as Venus was beginning to cross over this alignment here, this alignment that comes right through here like this, as Venus was beginning to cross over this way, right around on July 6th and 7th, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this comet shows up. What's interesting about this comet is that it was discovered back in March, but it wasn't expected to survive its trip around the sun. And so when it came around on right around July 6th or 7th, and it came around, all of a sudden showed up, it caught everybody by surprise. We had two comets earlier this year, Atlas and Swan, that were predicted to put on quite a show, but they broke up before they even made their trip around the sun. This particular comet wasn't expected to even survive its trip around the sun, and instead it did, and caught everyone by surprise. And it showed up as Venus was beginning to make its transition across through here, as it started to line up with in this alignment process with Venus and the Pleiades, and the follower of the Pleiades are Aldebaran. Aldebaran means the follower of the Pleiades, and so this is Aldebaran right here, and here's Venus, and then here's the Pleiades up here. So I find that this is kind of interesting for a variety of reasons. Let's go on here to our next slide. Now, ironically, the events that we have going on with Venus right now in its alignment with the Pleiades and Aldebaran, or the follower of the Pleiades, this is not the first rendezvous that that Venus has with the Pleiades. In fact, earlier this year, the Venus came right through the Pleiades. It came right through this area, right through here, and normally it passes a little more to this area right through here. But this go around, it actually occulted right over the top of the Pleiades itself. I actually watched it. It was quite beautiful to watch. And I was fascinated by that, just watching that itself. But it's actually currently making a trip around the sun. And as it has making its trip around the sun, it's going through its process now. But when we get to October, I think it's October 2nd or 3rd, Venus is going to go right over the top of the star Regulus, which is the heart of the lion in the constellation Leo. It's going to occult or eclipse right over the top of it for that one day, and it's going to do so on the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles. Now, I have a video on this. It's in my playlist, or my video list. You can go back and actually look at that. But just that presentation alone, with Venus going over the top of the Pleiades, and then eventually making the rendezvous where it's going to occult over the top of Regulus in the constellation of Leo on the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, that was enough for me to tell me that, that I need to be paying attention and watching. Then all of a sudden, the events that we have going on now just came out of nowhere. So what I find fascinating about this is that as Venus is passing over it's passing through its alignment with Aldebaran, the Pleiades watcher, the Pleiades watcher, and the constellation of the Pleiades. As it begins to pass through that alignment, all of a sudden this comet shows up, and and it shows up out of nowhere and catches everyone by surprise. And I think this is significant. You look at this correlation here. I actually made this a while back, and looks like a young lady down in the left-hand corner. She's actually taken that, and God bless her for being able to use that. But this was something that I came across through somebody else, and I put together this little diagram here to kind of show how this actually works. I didn't write all the names in there. The lady in the left-hand corner, she did it herself, but I put together the imagery here a while back. And what I find is interesting is that what was very common in the ancient world was for them to pattern their cities and their metropolises after constellations. In fact, there's a book out there that's called Star Cities of the Southwest. It's basically the ancient Indians here in the Americas built star cities, and they patterned them mostly after the constellation of Orion. Well, here you can see that these cities here, the seven churches of the book of Revelation, that they are actually patterned after the Pleiades, or the seven stars. This is very important for us to understand when we kind of take in consideration what's going on. Is we have a constellation that's called the Pleiades Watcher, and we have the Pleiades sitting on the backs of Taurus, which is known as the governor. Again, you see it right up here. You can see the here's Venus again, and we're back here, and this is the Pleiades follower, Aldebaran, and then we've got the Pleiades right up through here. And then we've got the Pleiades Watcher and the comet showing up in the constellation known as the Pleiades Watcher. What I find fascinating is that this comet, it's its first go-around for us. It has a cycle of about 6,800 years. Some people put it even longer than that. Some people have it up to 8,700 years. But NASA states that this comet takes about 6,800 years to make its lap around. It's one lap around. So essentially speaking, from a biblical perspective, that would entail a period of time that is longer than the Earth's been around from a biblical perspective, and it's not going to come around probably ever again. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, when Venus is making its second rendezvous with the Pleiades, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this constellation, or this comet, shows up in the constellation known as the Pleiades Watcher. I just don't think that these things are coincidence, folks. I mean, I realize that a lot of people kind of, like to just dismiss stuff like this, but I don't think these things are coincidence. I mean, it's hard to convince me that you could have something like this happen. Comets themselves they're not rare, and there's lots of them out there, but what is rare is being able to see them. The last one that we were able to see was 27 years ago, and I remember seeing it myself. And then before that, we were supposed to get Halley's Comet back in 1985 or 86, I remember, and it didn't do anything. And prior to that, there was a comet that showed up in the constellation of Cygnus back in 1976, I think it was. And prior to that, I think it was Halley's Comet that was the previous comet before that came around. And so they do come around every now and then. But what is interesting is that it's very unusual to actually be able to see them. In this particular case, when you're watching what Venus is doing and seeing how Venus is acting and behaving in its rendezvous that it's got not only with the Pleiades back in April of this year, but another rendezvous with Pleiades, Aldebaran, and the Pleiades itself, then it's got a rendezvous with Regulus, where it's going to occult over the top. It's going to eclipse over the top of Regulus on the first day of the Feast of Tabernacles. I just find this very difficult to believe that this is a coincidence, especially when you look at what's going on in the world around us today. I think that our attention needs to be directed to making preparations for ourselves to maybe at some point in time meet the Lord in the air. I mean, I'm not predicting and saying that the rapture is going to happen tomorrow or anything like that. I do believe that's a Feast of Trumpets event. But the bottom line is I just don't see how these things can actually be a coincidence. So You go ahead and take this and do what you want with it. Please feel free to subscribe if you like this, and leave a comment if you would, please, and share the video. You have a good day.